Your well is an eyesore and a health hazard. We're fixing this problem today. That's what the HOA president screamed at me while her hired thugs dumped cement mixer after cement mixer into my 150-year-old family well. I watched in horror as they destroyed something that had provided water to my family for 6 generations. But what they didn't know was that my great-great-grandfather wasn't just a farmer. He was also the man who negotiated the original water rights for this entire area. And those contracts? They were still valid. What happened next would leave 847 homes without water for 3 weeks and cost the HOA over $2.3 million in emergency repairs and legal fees. Before you watch full story, comment below where you're watching from. Let me start from the beginning. My name is David Thornton, and I'm the 6th generation of my family to live on Thornton Farm, a 47-acre property that's been in our family since 1847. When my great-great-grandfather, Samuel Thornton, first settled this land, it was nothing but prairie and forest. He dug the original well by hand, 127 feet deep, hitting an underground spring that had been flowing for thousands of years. That well has never run dry. Not during the Dust Bowl of the 1930s, not during the severe droughts of the 1950s and 1980s, not even during last year's record-breaking dry spell. It's been the most reliable water source for miles around. Over the decades, as suburbs grew up around our farm, developers have made countless offers to buy our land. Multi-million-dollar offers. But our family never sold. This land, this well, this heritage, it's priceless. 5 years ago, my grandfather passed away and left me the property. I was 34, working as a civil engineer in the city, but I made the decision to move back to the farm and preserve what my family had built. That's when I met the Meadowbrook Heights Homeowners Association. Meadowbrook Heights was built in 2018, a luxury suburban development of 847 homes surrounding my family's property on 3 sides. Beautiful houses, perfectly manicured lawns, and HOA fees that cost more per month than most people's mortgages. The HOA president, a woman named Patricia Belmont, approached me within a week of the first families moving in. "Mr. Thornton," she said, standing on my front porch in her designer suit and $500 shoes, "we need to discuss your situation." "What situation is that?" "Your property is bringing down our home values. That old farmhouse, the rusty equipment, and especially that hideous well in your front yard. It's not consistent with our community standards." I looked out at my front yard, where the original stone well sat exactly where my great-great-grandfather had built it. The wellhead was beautiful, hand-carved limestone with an old-fashioned wooden bucket system that I maintained for historical accuracy. "Ms. Belmont, this well has been here for 176 years. Your development has been here for 6 months. Be that as it may, we're prepared to offer you $2.7 million for your property. Cash. It's not for sale." Her smile became glacial. "Everything is for sale, Mr. Thornton. It's just a matter of finding the right price, or the right pressure." I should have paid more attention to that last part. What followed was 2 years of the most systematic harassment I've ever experienced. The HOA tried everything to force me off my land. Noise complaints. They claimed my rooster was violating noise ordinances. I had to go to 3 city council meetings to prove that agricultural properties were exempt from noise restrictions. Zoning challenges. They tried to get my property rezoned from agricultural to residential, which would have made farming impossible. That battle cost me $15,000 in legal fees. Safety concerns. They reported my well to the health department, claiming it was contaminating groundwater. After $8,000 in testing, the health department confirmed my well water was cleaner than city tap water. Property line disputes. They hired surveyors to prove that my well was actually on HOA property. 3 different surveys confirmed the well was dead center of my land. Code enforcement harassment. They filed complaints about everything from my barn's paint color to the height of my grass. I spent more time dealing with city inspectors than farming. But Patricia wasn't done. Not even close. 2 months ago, Patricia escalated to what she clearly thought was her trump card. She showed up at my door with a leather portfolio and her most intimidating smile. "David, I'm going to make you one final offer," she said. "The HOA has voted to assess each homeowner an additional $5,000 to buy your property. That's $4.2 million total. Take it, or things are going to get very unpleasant for you. And if I refuse? Then you'll discover that your little farm isn't as protected as you think it is." I refused. That's when she played what she thought was her ace in the hole. "Did you know, David, that the city has the right to condemn any property that poses a public health risk? And did you know that old wells can suddenly become problematic? Are you threatening me?" I'm educating you about the realities of modern development. She left that day with a look of smug satisfaction that should have warned me she was planning something drastic. It was a Tuesday morning, October 15th, when I heard the trucks coming up my driveway. I looked out my kitchen window to see a convoy that looked like a military operation. 3 cement trucks, 2 excavators, 1 drilling rig, a pumper truck, and Patricia's Mercedes leading the parade. I ran outside in my pajamas to find Patricia directing traffic like a general commanding troops. "What the hell is going on here?" I shouted over the noise of diesel engines. Patricia smiled and handed me an official-looking document. Emergency Health Department order. Your well has been declared a contamination risk to the municipal water supply. We're here to properly seal it with cement to prevent further environmental damage. I looked at the document. It looked official with stamps and signatures, but something felt wrong. I want to call the health department and verify this. You're welcome to try, Patricia said, but they're very busy today. Meanwhile, we have a job to do. That's when the cement trucks moved into position around my well. What happened next was like watching someone destroy a piece of history with industrial machinery. The crew Patricia had hired wasn't gentle. They ripped out the beautiful hand-carved stone wellhead with an excavator, tossing 176-year-old limestone blocks aside like garbage. Then they lowered a massive hose into the well shaft and started pumping. Load after load of cement went down that hole. The well that had sustained my family for 6 generations was being turned into a concrete monument to HOA power. "Stop!" I yelled, but Patricia just smiled. "David, this is for the greater good. Sometimes progress requires sacrifice." I tried calling the police, but Patricia handed me another document, a temporary restraining order preventing me from interfering with essential municipal health work. By the time the cement trucks were empty, my family's well was dead. Gone. Buried under tons of concrete. Patricia walked over to where I stood in shock. "I tried to do this the easy way, David. I offered you millions. But you chose to be stubborn. Now you have a concrete stump where your precious well used to be, and you still don't have city water access." She handed me a business card. "When you're ready to sell, call me." The moment Patricia's convoy left my property, I got on the phone. First, I called the city health department. "Emergency well sealing?" the supervisor said, confused. "We didn't issue any emergency orders today. Can you fax me that document?" Within an hour, I had my answer. The health department order was completely fake. Professional looking but fake. The restraining order was also bogus. No judge had signed it, no court had issued it. Patricia had just committed multiple felonies on my property, and I had it all on security camera. But my cameras had recorded something else too. Something Patricia didn't know about. During the cement operation, I'd heard one of the work crew talking on his radio. "Yeah, we're sealing the old Thornton well. Patricia says this should force him to hook up to city water like everyone else." That comment sent a chill down my spine because it reminded me of something I'd forgotten. Something from the dusty old papers in my grandfather's safe. That night, I drove to my grandfather's house and opened his old safe for the first time since the funeral. Inside were deed papers, land surveys, family photos, and a thick folder labeled "Water Rights. Keep safe." What I found inside that folder changed everything. My great-great-grandfather, Samuel Thornton, hadn't just been a farmer. In 1847, he'd been appointed by the territorial government as the Regional Water Rights Administrator. His job was to negotiate water access agreements for new settlements and ensure sustainable use of local water sources. The documents in the folder were original contracts, written in Samuel's own handwriting, establishing water rights for the entire area. According to these contracts, 1. The Thornton family held primary and perpetual water rights to the underground spring system. 2. All secondary water rights in the area were granted, at the discretion and approval of the Thornton family line. 3. Any disruption of the primary water source, my well, would void all secondary water rights immediately. And here was the kicker. Every property in Meadowbrook Heights was connected to the city water system through a contract that specifically referenced these 1847 water rights. Patricia's HOA had just sealed the primary water source that legally supported their entire community's water access. I spent the next 3 days with lawyers, historians, and water rights experts. The conclusion was unanimous. My family's 1847 water rights were still valid, still enforceable, and had just been violated in the most dramatic way possible. Better yet, the city's water contract with Meadowbrook Heights contained a clause that I'd bet Patricia had never read. This agreement is contingent upon continued compliance with historical water rights as established in the Thornton Water Rights Agreement of 1847. By cementing my well, the source of the primary water rights, the HOA had violated their contract with the city. My lawyer, Jennifer Walsh, yes, another Walsh, but this one was on my side, was practically gleeful as she explained our options. David, we can do this several ways. We can sue for damages, we can demand restoration, or... She paused with a wicked smile. We can invoke the contract violation clause and request immediate suspension of water service to the entire development. Can we really do that? Oh yes. And given that they used fraud and forgery to destroy a historical water source, I think the city will be very cooperative. The emergency city council meeting was held on a Friday afternoon. Word had gotten out about what the HOA had done, and the council chambers were packed. Patricia showed up with her own lawyer, clearly expecting this to be a routine discussion about property disputes. She was wearing another designer suit and her usual confident smile. That smile disappeared the moment Jennifer started presenting our case. Ladies and gentlemen of the council, Jennifer began, we're here today because the Meadowbrook Heights HOA has committed multiple felonies, destroyed a historical landmark, and violated the foundational water rights that support their entire community. She laid out the evidence methodically. The forged health department order. The fake restraining order. Security camera footage of the destruction. The original 1847 water rights contracts. The city's current water agreement with Meadowbrook Heights. Patricia's lawyer kept objecting, but the evidence was overwhelming. Then Jennifer dropped the bombshell. Under the terms of the 1847 water rights agreement, which is referenced in the current city contract, the destruction of the primary water source constitutes a material breach of contract. My client is hereby formally requesting immediate suspension of water service to all properties in Meadowbrook Heights until the primary water source is fully restored. The room erupted. Patricia shot to her feet, her face purple with rage. This is ridiculous. You can't cut off water to 847 homes because of some dusty old papers. The city attorney, who had been frantically reviewing documents, looked up with a grim expression. Actually, Ms. Belmont, the contracts are quite clear. The water rights are valid and the breach is substantial. The city has no choice but to suspend service pending resolution of this matter. The city gave Meadowbrook Heights 48 hours notice. On Monday morning, October 28th, at exactly 8 a.m., the water was turned off to all 847 homes in the development. I watched from my front porch as city workers installed locks on the main water valves serving the HOA properties. My house, being on the original farm property with grandfather clause city access, wasn't affected. By 9 a.m. my phone was ringing non-stop. Angry homeowners who just discovered they couldn't shower, couldn't flush toilets, couldn't make coffee. Patricia called me directly at 10:15 a.m. David, this is insane. You're punishing 847 innocent families because of a civil dispute. Patricia, I didn't turn off your water. You did. When you illegally destroyed my well. We'll pay to have it restored. We'll dig it out. With what water? And how exactly do you dig cement out of a 127-foot well without damaging the underground spring system? The silence on the other end of the phone told me she was finally understanding the magnitude of what she'd done. By day 3 of the water shutoff, Meadowbrook Heights was in full crisis mode. The HOA had hired emergency water truck services, but trucking water for 847 homes cost $47,000 per day. Patricia had also hired emergency restoration contractors to try to remove the cement from my well. The estimates were staggering. $380,000 to excavate and remove the cement. $150,000 to restore the original well structure. $90,000 for environmental impact studies. $200,000 in potential fines for illegal destruction of a historical site. And that was assuming the underground spring hadn't been permanently damaged. Meanwhile, homeowners were furious. Property values were crashing as word spread about the water rights dispute. Several families had already put their houses on the market. The local news picked up the story, and it wasn't favorable to Patricia or the HOA. HOA president destroys 176-year-old well, leaves 847 homes without water. $1 million development cut off from water after illegal well destruction. Historical water rights claim leaves luxury neighborhood dry. By day 7, Patricia was desperate. She showed up at my door at 6 a.m., looking like she hadn't slept in a week. David, please. We'll do anything. Just tell the city to turn the water back on. It's not up to me anymore, Patricia. You violated a legal contract. The city has to protect its liability. What do you want? Money? We'll pay whatever it costs. I thought about her offer for a moment. I want my well restored to its original condition. I want a public apology for the forgery and fraud. And I want a guarantee that the HOA will never again attempt to interfere with my property. Done. All of it. How long will that take? The restoration experts say 3 weeks minimum, assuming the spring system wasn't permanently damaged. Patricia's face went white. 3 weeks? The homeowners are already talking about suing the HOA. We can't afford 3 weeks of water trucks. You should have thought about that before you filled my well with cement. By day 10, the financial pressure was breaking the HOA. The daily water truck costs had risen to $63,000 as more families demanded service. Several restaurants and businesses in the development had closed temporarily. But the real crisis came when the HOA's insurance company denied coverage for the incident. Intentional criminal acts are not covered under your policy, the insurance adjuster explained. Forgery, fraud, and destruction of property are specifically excluded. The HOA was facing $820,000 in restoration costs for my well, $630,000 in water truck expenses and climbing, $2.3 million in potential lawsuits from homeowners, $450,000 in property value losses, criminal charges against Patricia and the board. The HOA's emergency fund was $800,000. They were already bankrupt. On day 12, everything got worse for Patricia. The FBI showed up at her door. Apparently, destroying a water source that dated to 1847 qualified as destruction of a historical site under federal law. The forged government documents made it mail fraud. And the conspiracy to force me off my land through illegal means qualified as extortion. Patricia was arrested on federal charges and held on $500,000 bail. The local news coverage was brutal. HOA president arrested in well destruction scandal. Federal charges filed in historical water rights case. FBI. Homeowners Association destroyed 176-year-old landmark. While Patricia sat in jail, the emergency restoration work on my well began. It was like watching an archaeological dig in reverse. The contractors had to remove the cement in layers, carefully extracting it without damaging the original stone walls or disturbing the underground spring system. Every day, curious neighbors and news crews gathered to watch the progress. The well had become a symbol of something bigger, the fight between historical preservation and modern development pressure. On day 18, the drilling crew hit water again. The spring was still flowing, still clean, still providing the same clear water it had for thousands of years. The restoration crew worked around the clock to rebuild the stone wellhead using the original limestone blocks Patricia's crew had thrown aside. Craftsmen used 19th-century techniques to restore the hand-carved details. On day 21, exactly 3 weeks after the shutoff began, the city restored water service to Meadowbrook Heights. I was there when they turned the valves, standing next to my fully restored well. The contrast was striking, 847 modern homes getting their water turned back on, while the 176-year-old well that had made it all possible stood proudly restored. Patricia, now out on bail, was also there. She looked like she'd aged 10 years in 3 weeks. "David," she said quietly, "I owe you an apology." "Yes, you do." I was so focused on property values and community standards that I forgot this place has a history that matters more than home prices. She handed me an envelope. The HOA has voted to pay full restoration costs and establish a $200,000 historical preservation fund for your property. We've also voted to remove all restrictions that might affect your farming operations. Patricia's criminal trial was front-page news for weeks. She eventually pleaded guilty to federal fraud charges and was sentenced to 18 months in prison plus community service. The civil lawsuit was settled out of court. The HOA paid $1.2 million in damages, plus all restoration costs. More importantly, the case established a legal precedent. Water rights dating to territorial agreements couldn't be violated by modern development, even through HOA pressure. Several other historical properties in similar situations reached out to my lawyer, and we've helped protect 3 other family farms from HOA harassment. Today, my well stands exactly as it did when my great-great-grandfather built it, but now there's a bronze plaque beside it explaining its historical significance. The Meadowbrook Heights HOA has new leadership focused on community cooperation rather than property control. They've actually helped establish a farmer's market where I sell produce from my restored farm. Property values in the development have recovered and are actually higher than before, with real estate agents marketing the area as historically significant and featuring preserved heritage sites. Patricia finished her prison sentence and moved away. I heard she's working for a nonprofit now, helping preserve historical sites. Maybe she learned something from our battle. The most important outcome wasn't the money or the legal precedent. It was preserving something irreplaceable. My well is flowing again, providing the same pure spring water it has for 176 years. My family's heritage is intact. The land my great-great-grandfather settled will stay in our family for future generations. Last month, my nephew graduated college with a degree in sustainable agriculture. He's moving back to help run the farm and continue what Samuel Thornton started in 1847. Sometimes the old ways are worth fighting for. Sometimes historical rights matter more than modern convenience. And sometimes, when someone tries to concrete over your family's legacy, the best response is to remind them that some things can't be buried. The well that Patricia tried to destroy with cement now stands as a monument to the power of water rights, family heritage, and the simple truth that you can't buy or bully your way past 176 years of history. What would you have done if someone destroyed your family's historical property? Comment below with your thoughts. And subscribe for more unbelievable property rights battles.